I voted yes. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Again, apologies for my bandaged ankle, which doesn't allow me to be there today. Look forward to being there next time. We're going to move a couple of things a little bit on the agenda, just because Scott Diffenderfer cannot join us until a little bit after 5 o'clock. But first order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th as circulated?
I'll approve. My motion to approve.
Okay, and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you very much. And is there any discussion, anything in the minutes that? No? Okay, so all in favor of adopting the minutes as circulated, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. The next thing on the agenda, the commissioner engagement discussion. We do have a commissioner here, of course, but as Commissioner Dominguez who is always with us, and we're so grateful. But we were going to have other commissioners come. Gabby and Amy, I think you said that we had Commissioner Fernandez for May, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. We were unable to invite a commissioner today because they were holding the day for the special commission meeting. But definitely Commissioner Fernandez is set for May. And then I believe we've extended the invitation to Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez. We haven't heard back yet, right?
They wanted to see more dates for July.
Okay, so looks like she's not available in June. So we will hopefully at the end of this meeting, we'll choose more dates for July and September and October perhaps. But I think the next one you had possibly wanted to invite would be, was it the mayor, Madam Chair?
Yes, I think we definitely wanted to invite the mayor. So if the mayor's schedule is clear, is everybody good with that?
Can I speak to that for a second? I really think that we should come up with a list of questions to ask each one, the same questions, obviously, for each individual.
Sure. Yeah, so we actually have the list. It should be in the minutes that we talked about last time, and we did share those with the commissioners we invited. Oh. So
the list of questions.
Have the list of questions.
They're in the December.
Okay, perhaps in the December minutes. We can pull them up and read them to you.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the minutes from this last meeting.
I think it was the December meeting.
Okay, so I think that Kirk makes a good point. So we should, do we want to do that right now, or do we want to do it offline and circulate it?
If we have the list of questions in the December meeting minutes, then there's no reason for us to do it now. It's going to take up time.
Okay, well, let me go back and we'll go back and get pull the December. So I think it had to do with what kinds of resiliency projects they were most interested in and how they were going to support that kind of thing. But I'll be happy to take that job with Amy and Gabby and go back and look and then put something out to you all in the coming weeks, if that's okay.
Claire, Gabby has them up right here.
Okay, oops.
Yeah, I can read them out loud. I don't have them on the USB. So the 3 questions were, the first one is, please discuss your philosophy and priorities regarding the management and communication of the city's resilience infrastructure projects, which we had estimated to be about a 5-minute discussion. Then it was, please share any projects or priorities that you've championed, which is another 5 minutes or so. And then 10 minutes of Q&A.
How's that sound, everybody? Thank you. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds good. So we'll go ahead and extend the invitation to the mayor for the June meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that, because Scott Diffenderfer is going to be a bit delayed, could we go to the overview of communication for the Normandy Isle traffic calming project? Because I think we're all very interested in that, given that there was a lot of concern about the communication there. So let's go right there. Everybody.
So And Madam Chair, Kevin is in the city manager's Memorial Day planning meeting, so he sent Dexter, who's wonderful. So Dexter Peralta is here to speak on behalf of Neighborhood Affairs Division. And then we have O'Neill is here on behalf of Jose Gonzalez because he's also in the Memorial Day planning meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, well, welcome, and thank you. So did you want to, we're concerned, as you know, last time we discussed our concern that the Normandale Traffic Calming Project communications had some important gaps that allowed stakeholders to not be aware. And we just wondered if we could get an overview, and maybe there's some lessons learned in there that that you all might want to point out, or we can all kind of discuss ways we might be able to suggest and recommend. So if you want to just go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. O'Neill Rodriguez, Assistant Director with the Transportation Mobility Department. This discussion is here as a result of a referral from Vice Mayor Dominguez. I don't know, Vice Mayor, do you want to say a few words before I go into, I guess, my part of how we got here?
Nope, you can take it away. I feel that I'm talked out after the Public Safety and Neighborhood Quality of Life Committee, and I must be having PTSD because every time Amy says Vice Chair or Chair, Madam Chair, I'm like, I'm still at the committee. So you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. On March 6th, we had a public meeting with the neighborhood, the Normandy Isles neighborhood. As you guys may know, we do have a traffic calming project in the neighborhood. It's a GOB project. It was part of the GOB of 2018 that was approved by the residents. As a result of that project, we have a few devices that we're proposing for the neighborhood to slow down traffic, to make sure that the vehicles respect the traffic signage is out there, but more specifically the stop signs to make sure that they comply with the posted speed limits. So for that, we're proposing a series of devices like speed humps, speed tables. That's a version of a speed hump. We have traffic circles at a few locations, and we also have raised crosswalk, which is the same as a speed table. However, they're at the same location where a crosswalk would be. Now, as a result of those traffic calming devices, there is a total of 69 parking spaces that are proposed to be lost. We understood the significance of it, which is why we then decided to go back to the community, have a second community meeting, and let them know what the impact of the project would be and get their feedback. We received the feedback that we anticipated. We do understand that there's a need for parking in the Normandy Island, especially in North Beach. So that was the majority of the feedback that we received, but then again, another part of the feedback received was the fact that the multifamily residential units who have a homeowners association, not all the units were aware of the implications or were even aware of the project. So now to give you a little bit of history of how we got to that point. So we followed a traffic calming manual. That was a document that was drafted a few years back, and it was approved by both the Miami-Dade County and also by our city commission. That traffic calming manual is very much tailored to single family homes. It requires for every affected property to be in favor or have be in agreement of having a traffic calming device in front of their property, or if it's in the intersection, all four corner properties would have to be in favor. The traffic calming manual, it's silent when it comes to the neighborhoods where we have multifamily residents as it is Normandy Island. So the approach, the common practice and the approach that we took with reaching out to the multifamily homes, we reached out to the HOA that was in place at the time that we did the balloting process. Just to make you guys aware, we did conduct a balloting process 3 times in this neighborhood. We did not receive a lot of feedback from the neighborhood at the time. There was a condition or a clause as part of the ballot that was mailed to the properties or when it became the multifamilies that we sent to the HOAs, that if we did not receive a response, then we would consider that as a no objection. So that we would consider that as a yes vote. So that was the case with the majority of the responses that we received. The reason why we would reach out to the HOAs is because from our point of view, the HOA speaks on behalf of all the units for the entire, in this case, condo association. We understand based on the feedback that we received that some HOAs are not as proactive in disseminating the message to all the units in the property. So that's pretty much where we are. We did go back, we reconvened immediately after, that was a Wednesday. On a Friday, we met with our then assistant city manager, now interim city manager, and our deputy city manager to see how we can better address the situation. We have worked with our consultant on this project to see how we can minimize the impact of parking. We have come up with some strategies to how we can reduce the number of parking spaces. As a positive outcome, we've been able to reduce the number of parking spaces. We recently received that information last week. I still have not been able to discuss it with administration. So we're here now to get your feedback to see how we can better improve this process, ensure that that every resident, everybody gets the message, and that they have an opportunity to voice their opinion. And at the same time, I would have to go back to the administration. We may have to do another public meeting. That is still on the table to let them know. Based on the feedback, we did go back and we have new recommendations, solutions to that we heard their concerns, and also we may be looking at conducting another balloting process depending on the recommendations that we receive from you guys. So that's what we're here. That was a pretty long explanation, but I thought it was important to get as much of the story as to how we got there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's obviously a long process. 2 things stand out to me, which we did sort of hear last time as well. One is that no response from homeowners associations or others or single family owners is considered a yes. Okay, in the process, which seems to be, as you already pointed out, which seems to assume something that maybe it shouldn't, especially on behalf of HOAs, where people clearly were not getting the message. And the second is that the manual itself, the way it runs, seems to, if I heard you correctly, favor single family homes and sort of make sure that where of course it's easier to get a direct response from the owner as well. So that I guess there would be, how to more directly or effectively deal with the HOAs and multifamilies would be one place to focus your efforts. And the other might be to look at, having a city process that doesn't take a no response as a yes. Those would be my 2 comments. And maybe we could open it up. We can sort of go around the table, sort of. Kurt, do you have comments or questions?
I have a couple of comments or just questions rather. I'm assuming that the calming measures that you're talking about now, like the speed bumps and things like that, in the neighborhoods like Perez Drive and Marseille Drive, all that areas. What are you putting in place, or if you can put anything in place on 71st Street, the state roads? Can you do anything there?
So the state road, 71st Street in Normandy, it's a state road.
Right.
is under their jurisdiction. They're not, when it comes to traffic calming, especially since 71st Street is also considered an evacuation route.
Right.
They're not, as open to doing traffic calming, the way that we would do in city-owned roadways.
Right.
However, with 71st and Normandy, we are working with the state. They're currently performing a safety audit, where they're looking at the entire corridor. We raised our concern, we heard the concerns from multiple residents, especially as we approach the fountain, the eastbound direction, where we seem to have the majority of accidents. So we're looking at that intersection. We're looking at ways to add awareness to the drivers to slow down. We're also looking at adding additional crosswalks so that way pedestrians are able to cross the street in a more safe manner. There's a lot of crosswalks along that corridor. So we're looking at that with FDOT. We're pending the report back, which we will review, and then we'll be providing comments to the state, and hopefully will become a project in the future.
What about, I heard like this, the Black Cat cameras?
Yes.
Are you gonna install them on 71st Street? Is that one of the places areas?
So the idea with the Black Cats is to have some type of program in which those are deployed throughout the state as the concerns are brought up, and the way we could collect speed data and know where they're speeding, and then can deploy resources for enforcement. So that's the intent for those Black Cats.
I do know that one area in particular is where you desperately need a crosswalk is by the tag agency.
Yes.
That's one critical spot that we need a crosswalk. Because every day I see people running across the street.
I believe that's by Dickens, close to.
Yeah, it's right, it's like, right as you turn, and also another bad area, intersection, right where Indian Creek runs into 71st Street.
Yeah.
As you make that turn.
Yeah,
Because I got a car
that's part of the
right there.
area of study.
Yeah, because the streets are so narrow in that intersection that it's almost impossible to go left hand turn if there's a commercial traffic street.
I would like to make sure that we also are bringing this back to the situation of the Normandy Isle project, so that we don't lose sight of, sort of where we're trying to help in this. Kurt, any more specific stuff with respect to the communication issues that we heard about with the Normandy Isle, or shall we move to Karen?
Move to what, you said?
Move to Karen. She's next
Okay.
I'm going around the room.
Sure. My only question was, do you have a feel for what the numbers are, the yes votes versus the no votes, not counting the non-responsive votes?
If I remember on top of my head, we received about 70 votes over the hundreds of ballots that were sent out, and the majority were in favor. However, there are 3 devices that were not approved as part of the project, in which we believe are critical, and similar to what occurred in the Bayshore neighborhood. The county does give us the provision that if the city believes that a traffic calming device is critical for the effectiveness of a project, then a resolution from the city commission needs to receive resident opposition. So we're still dealing with this particular concern. We have not reached out, have not moved forward in that path for those 2 devices that we do believe are critical. We're trying to first alleviate this the communication aspect of it. So yeah, we've received a very low percentage of responses from the ballot.
Do you know what the total amount sent out were, more or less?
It wasn't. Yeah, it was around 500.
Yeah. Wow, that was a low response.
Yes.
I think it is important to get those, to have that data though, right? If we're looking at where the gaps might be, and what happens. Karen, was that sort of your point too, that if we have those numbers, then we can sort of help figure out what's happening.
Right, because it's kind of nebulous when you count the absentees as yeses. I think, it's not an accurate temperature of the community.
Exactly. It's a system that's kind of built to have this sort of problem from the get-go, right? As I understand it, it's that manual, that system, that process, whatever, is something that the city sort of inherited from or took on from the county. Is that right, O'Neill?
The fire traffic, the county has their own traffic calming manual per se. We have our own and I guess the difference in between ours and theirs is the criteria to evaluate whether it advises one to a specific location or not. However,
Okay.
the conditions are pretty much the same as to the communication process. And again, the fact that we reach out to the HOA, I read about clause that was something that it's not necessarily included in the manual. That
Yeah.
was a common practice that was taken for this project.
I gotcha. Okay, but it is, since it's our manual, it is possible that the process could be adjusted.
Definitely, that's something that can be based on any recommendations made. We can go back and look at our manual, and see how we can incorporate those recommendations. Ultimately, the manual, does need to be reviewed and approved by the county, so we would have to go through that process to amend our traffic calming manual. But yeah, it's not something that cannot be done. It's definitely something
Got it.
that can be amended.
Great.
So ballots, sorry, one more question. The ballots are sent out by mail
Yes, certified mail.
of certified mail? I see. And then they're returned by regular mail?
It has,
There's a pre-postage envelope, so they can, fill out the ballot, put it in the envelope, and then they have to pay for a stamp, and it just goes to us.
I see.
Got it. Yeah, it certainly seems like
An
some
electronic
adjustment.
ballot, or, to communicate electronically to the residents in the area?
Sure, so if I can just jump in, Dexter Carlton, Neighborhood Affairs, good afternoon, everyone. So on the overall communication aspect, so O'Neill was referring a lot on the property by property communication and the overall city communication. All of our communications are electronic, so we use constant contact. We have a project fact sheet, we provide project updates as when it's warranted, as well as advertising public meetings. So for example, for the impact on traffic, we had a project update as well as the public meeting went out to not only to everyone in Normandy, everyone who signed up for our constant contact emails, as well as everyone in North, just in case someone signed up for one and not for the other. We also post it on our social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Nextdoor. I personally ran a Nextdoor page, so we posted those all the time. Unfortunately, not everyone always attends our meetings, or not everyone because they sort of toss the email to the side. So that's an issue that we have just generally with all the communications throughout the city. I think one thing that we can explore with transportation is when we something like a DocuSign level of electronic balloting, but that's something that transportation would have to look into first, to get into the system. But yes, primarily on the property by properties, like O'Neill mentioned, the transportation goes to the condo associations. Normally at that time, did not have a homeowners association yet. We had someone sort of filtering out information to the HOA and all of Normandy sued, which as of recently, a few months ago, they reformed the HOA. So moving forward, it would be a better communication practice, working directly with the HOA, less context, and the majority of the neighborhood. And then I think the big issue, as O'Neill mentioned, was the condo association and the condo management. Especially since I think one of the buildings, the King Cole building, we switched management so many times in the past, 2 or 3 years that we've been at this. That information was just not shared with all the members, or residents, I should say. So there is, we try our best to share electronically and do as much as we can. Oftentimes, we get spam emails and things like that, and we toss it around. But I think electronic balloting would not be something that we can look into, as long as it's not altered.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So, I mean, what you're saying is that you're exploring I'm sorry, this is an imperfect world, and so I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing, so I'm like trying to put my ear next to the computer. So, no, it is what it is. But what you're saying though is that you would like to explore electronic balloting for sure, right? That
Yeah,
might,
I'm sorry, it's definitely a recommendation that transportation and communication that we can look into. It's of course not a guarantee, it's something we have to get approved, of course, and you know, O'Neill knows the whole process of that. But it's something we can take back to our director and hopefully.
okay, and you're also talking a little bit about the difference between the management of a condominium or HOA and the HOA itself. I mean, might that be something that we want to explore because, you know, you have the manager and then you have the board. Then of course, you know, the residents. So it's kind of maybe the ball's getting dropped somewhere in there, but you're not sure where. Might there be an idea of even, and I know Neil already said you're looking at doing another public meeting where you could get public feedback. But might there be a way to explore if there's a better route to go in trying to make sure that the residents do get the message? That would be just a suggestion.
Sorry, correct, and as I mentioned, so we had the new HOA in Normandy Suite before, I think about a month ago I joined them. So that's a big, HOA is a very big important factor when we send out information on any project that is transportation. And we have, you know, neighborhood affairs, we built a relationship with the HOA presidents and the board. So we count on them and we work closely with them to spread out the information. In this particular case, like I said, it was the change in management seemed from, when you're correct me if I'm wrong, that one King Cole building, they just never provided a response. And we also didn't receive a return to sender. So, you know, let's say we're to get, you know, your ballot and you no longer live there, or, you know, for whatever it may be, it comes back to us and we get a return to sender from that King Cole building. We did not get a return to sender. And it also did not provide a response. So that's what that says yes to. So they didn't, as from what we got from the public meeting, they didn't share it and they also didn't provide a response, but they couldn't be received.
Okay, and we have, so Karen had a chance, Kurt had, Alon, would you like to go next?
Do we have the exact locations of where the bumps are going?
Yes.
And physically here, I don't have it to share. But we do have, I could share with Amy and we can make it available as well. The board members.
Is it true that when the bumps were implemented on Pine Tree in the 40s or 30s, there was an accident like within a day or two of somebody fell off a scooter? Know about that? They took off the bumps right after.
Well, there's a section of Pine Tree Drive and the boards where you have the two-way pairs that do have. The speed.
I think it was just south of 41st Street.
I heard that, but I heard the residents complain. I didn't hear.
Oh, you're talking about the roam boosters that was recently installed during COVID. That is the issue with those that's a speed mitigation strategy. However, the negative effect of that is the noise that they create. The county installed them, and within a few days they came back and installed them. Also, we have a speeding issue along Collins Avenue. At DOT as part of one of the projects installed on between the 5700 block and 63rd Street. And within the week of them being installed, we heard a lot of negative feedback. So that was something that was recently taken to USFPOC and ultimately to the City Commission, where they recommended to remove. And since then, the city has removed them. So yeah, if that's what you're referring to, but I'm not aware of an accident that was caused as a result of those bump strips.
So here we're looking at just bumps.
Speed tables, yes, speed tables, traffic circle and narrowing of the streets, and also raised crosswalks.
What's the total cost?
Okay, I want to, sorry, and soon I want to move this along a bit because I know we have several other things. I want to make sure we hear from everybody on the committee, and I also want to make sure we're focusing a bit on the communication, you know, recommendations or improvements that we might be able to make with respect to the projects as opposed to the projects themselves or what they're doing, although that's also important. So we haven't heard from Ron, right?
Yeah, I have a couple. First question, when you say HOA, do you mean the legal homeowners associations, or are you talking about neighborhood associations, which are non-legal entities that just are a collection of people who may or may not have been elected?
Sorry, that's correct. So for example, the HOA Normandy suit is more along the latter. It's a collection of neighborhoods. They do register with the city. I don't believe Normandy has registered yet with the state, and I know some of the HOAs register with Sundays and they have everything on there. What O'Neill was referring to was more the condo associations. So I know the condos. I'm not exactly sure if King Core or the smaller ones. In Normandy have them, but the condo associations usually have a condo board. Again, I'm not familiar with the condo board in King Cole. If they have any, I just know they spoke at the last public meeting, but they did not speak as a condo board itself.
Yeah, because I would say don't rely on neighborhood associations, because, first of all, HOAs is a legal term and it's governed by a certain statute and so on. So I think often people are saying neighborhood homeowners association when they really mean neighborhood association, which is a very different thing. But certainly I would think you would want to reach out to all the condo buildings and homeowners associations if they exist, which include legal entities, and then neighborhood associations. And from what I understand is for the survey purposes, you just reached out to those. You didn't send anything that you regular owners, right? Homeowners, except for single family. Yeah. Okay. Then the second thing is when you sent out your survey and you asked people, what do you think of these different traffic calming things? Did you tell them that if you choose these, that there will be a loss of 69 spaces, or were they only presented half the story?
Say that again?
As I understand it, if by choosing to do these traffic calming project, you would have the loss of 69 spaces under the original. Right. When you communicated to the residents and did the survey, asking them about whether they wanted, what they thought of these different traffic calming alternatives, did you tell them, and by the way, there would be a loss of X number of parking spaces as a result of this, or were they just presented with what might look like something they might like without knowing anything about the negative part?
Great question.
That is a very good question. So no, the ballot itself did not have the number of parking spaces that would be lost as a result.
Because
So
I
that's
think.
why we
Yeah,
decided to
and
have
and I see this happen again and again. I could name a number of different projects where all that's presented is the project, but not, and all people see is maybe the good part, but they're not seeing the other side of it, which is that there might be some consequences to it.
Correct, and to that point, that's where we felt the need to go back to the community and make them aware of the fact that there is a significant loss of parking spaces.
Right. And also, I'd say, and with this type thing, there is a certain amount of noise, and
well, not with the ones that we're proposing.
okay, so you
We're talking about, that was a different treatment.
Okay, so none of the options are with the noise, so the only negative consequence would be left drive slower. And the loss of parking spaces, which needs to be, I think, communicated more, because some people might say, well, in that case, I'd rather not have the device.
Sure. Which is what they raised in the.
Yeah, which is what should be determined upfront.
Right.
That's the big lesson learned.
So there, just to clarify, there were 2 public meetings that were done, 3 public meetings. In those first 2, there was always communicated that there would be a loss of parking. At that point in time, since the design was not at a place where we could determine the loss of parking, we were not able to provide that definitive number of parking spaces. It wasn't until we progressed the design that we were able to quantify what how many parking spaces, which is why we had a third. But we've always told them, we've always made an effort to bring the message out there that yes, there's a potential, there's always a potential.
Yeah, so, but my point is, only that if you're doing actual surveys,
Correct.
that you provide the story there, because it's one thing in a meeting where you'll get, it's hard to say, not everybody speaks, right? So you get sampling of people. But if you're actually going to the process of mailing out a survey and trying to get responses, then I think it's very, very important to have full disclosure, even if you don't know the exact number of spaces, you can say something. Say a range.
I think that's a great point, because that way you've delivered any downside and upfront. And it should make any meetings you have after that more productive, because people already have an idea about whatever negative or possibly negative impact there might be to something that they otherwise would perceive as positive. So anything else, Ron, before we?
Nope, that's it.
No. So those are good suggestions, I think. And I see Galen is on virtually, right? Galen, did you have something you wanted to add? You could unmute yourself and add.
Yeah, sorry. Hey,
Hi.
I'm literally on my bike, but so I'll be in like 2 minutes, and then I will voice my
Okay.
opinion.
All
See you
right,
soon.
well, we're gonna try and wrap it up, but come on in. So does anyone else have any other suggestions or recommendations?
I had two quick little questions also. Number one, the wording of the ballot, do you think it was like easily understandable for residents?
So, and that's what I'm looking at right now. So the ballot, it's a one-pager ballot. It tells them, why we're here, why you're receiving this. And then it goes into the different devices that we're proposing overall. And why that particular device, it's effective and why it's required, so. Can it be more straightforward, simpler? There's always room for improvement. And that's something that we could definitely.
And the ballots also include, it may, of course, you can't click on it, but it's easy to know that you can type it in, that it takes you to the public meetings that we had, where they can see the explanation of all the traffic calming devices and, it's benefiting.
Yeah, so there are improvements that could be made to the ballot itself in terms of informing people. And it looks like there are improvements that can be made also with respect to the process. So the content of the ballot and the notifications, and also the process of notifying can be adjusted or streamlined, if what I'm hearing around the table is correct. And I'm wondering, I know Galen is on his way in, but is there any, I mean, I don't know that we need an LTC on this with recommendations, but is it clear to you all, Othniel, and in neighborhoods? So is it clear to you what's being recommended?
Yeah, so from.
Yeah, no, yes, I understand. And I wanted to answer your question. There was not a Spanish translation.
Oh, there was
It was
not.
It was done in English.
Okay.
But we can, that's a recommendation.
Yeah, I definitely, that's a heavy Argentinian.
Yes,
Yeah,
very,
that's
very
definitely-
Hispanic area, yes.
And that's something we can incorporate into the user recommendations we have here.
So from what I've heard and based on the discussion, we're gonna see how we can perhaps implement some sort of an electronic balloting. We're gonna make sure, see how we can incorporate throughout, again, for doing this, it's more part of the process at what point in time the ballot was in place, to include a potential number of parking spaces, like the negative impacts of what the project would be. Make sure that the ballot is more simple to read, and also have it available in other languages other than English. I know we also have a Creole, we're in Spanish, we also but we do English, Spanish, and Creole, so that's something that we can also potentially look into. And then always the outstanding overall recommendation, which is if we reach out to the HOA, how do we make sure that the HOA is getting it and that they're sending the message to everybody there, or seeing how we can reach out to every single individual property. So that's what
Yeah, that's pretty much what I heard. Is that what everybody else heard?
I'm assuming you determined which parking places that are limited.
at this point in time, yes, so at the time that we did the balloting before, we did not have that information.
Are they like equitable and in the neighborhood as far as, which ones are being taken?
Correct, so the speed tables, and on average, we're losing, since this particular, the street that they drive and they drive on the south, and I forget the name of the north. So you have parking on both sides, you're losing about 4 spaces per speed table. Then you have the traffic circles, which has the biggest impact. One of them, you're losing about 22 parking spaces, the other one, you're losing about 17. So the traffic circles are the ones that are losing, are most impactful. So yes, we do have exactly where we're losing parking spaces right now. That was the information that was shared. And if you guys like, I'd be more than happy to share the presentation, a PDF format that we shared with you. So you guys have it, that has the total numbers per location, and the overall map of all those devices.
Sure, if we could get that at some point, that would be great. But I think that, I know that one of the issues perennially is that until any project gets to a certain, and correct me if I'm wrong, till any project gets to a certain percent design in the phasing of the project, things aren't nailed down, so they're often not communicated. And then when things get, this happened, I know in South of Fifth, and I know Ron can attest to this too. Things then appear to pop up out of nowhere later on when the project is moving along the timeline. So there seems to be that kind of disconnect period where there isn't perfect information or specific information enough, and then no information gets communicated. Does that make sense?
And that's exactly what happened here. We are at 60% design plans. We're not at a full 100% design. We're just at 60 where we're comfortable enough to come up with what that overall number would be, which at that point we were able to.
Exactly. So I'm wondering if in future, one of the things that you might look at as you're having your meetings and adjusting the process, is if there's any way to at least let people know that there will be impacts of a certain kind. It's just that you don't have, that the data is only done at a certain place in the timeline. And I know in the past we've suggested, I don't know how feasible this is, you all do, but we've suggested that providing people with a timeline that says, okay, so here's when we're going to know for sure what that number is going to look like. At least lets them know that there might be an impact that they need to pay attention to up the road. So no pun intended. And I don't know, but that's just a comment. It doesn't, you don't need to say yes or no, but you might want to add that as a way to communicate at least the possibility up front. So go ahead. Anybody else before I move along?
Yeah, quick comment. So for example, here it would have been helpful if you didn't have a number to say that those tables,
Speed tables?
speed tables, loss of spaces, 2 to 4 or whatever, circles potential loss of space 10 to 30, 10 to 20, you know, something that lets people know, hey, this has a bigger impact, then they might be more likely to say maybe no to one and okay to the other.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Ron. Just some sort of a gauge that allows people to say, oh, I didn't realize that was gonna happen. You know, now I'm gonna rethink a little bit. Okay, is there anybody
Just
else?
walked in.
I'm sorry that I'm late, but I just have
Dale?
a quick
Go ahead.
thought. Like just 2 things quickly. One, if we are talking about front and centering the loss of parking spaces, I think at the same time, you should talk about what it is that you're gaining. Just, I mean, like there's something like maybe it increases property values or something, like
Right,
know how that works and how you would balance it, but if you just put, hey, you're gonna lose parking spots, people will
Right.
look on it, and then you just have to have that conversation.
right, there's a way to phrase it.
Yeah, and but I think, and maybe this is a future discussion, but how do we put those future resilience benefits into people's hands? Because people's property values along Purdy have gone up a lot. And it's been supported by that investment. They didn't know that was gonna happen, but now we've done the studies and we know. So I don't know how you introduce that information.
That's a good point.
We can talk about in the future maybe.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, I just have this concern that people may have engaged in this process early on and said, hey, I do wanna trade parking spots. And then other people come in later and are like, no. Because I experienced that as a bicyclist, where I engaged in a process. We got commitments to add bike lanes, and then later in the process, they were taken out. And more vocal people who came in at the end, but I had already spent my time. And I thought that it had been engaged, you know, I mean, it was literally years before along West Ave. Like, now it's a decade ago. And those things didn't come in because some other people later on who hadn't participated, you know, did, and I wasn't able to do it in that one. So it's just, we're balancing a lot. Like, do I feel for you? I just want to bring that up because it's an experience I had here in Miami as a resident.
Yep.
It's a very good point.
Okay.
And I think that's where it does take very strong leadership.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be changing decisions. I mean, every 6 months a decision will change on a project, so it is important to stay, I think, you know, to recognize that that's a challenge we face.
Thanks.
Anything else before we move along? We've had a pretty full discussion, and I hope that we've helped come up with some suggestions that and recommendations. And then we'll be kept abreast of the next public meeting that you may have on this, Normandy Al?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, and just final comments from my end, we appreciate the feedback that we got from you guys, we're gonna take those into consideration. I do have to meet with our city administration, to come up with a game plan, and once we have that public meeting scheduled, we'll make sure that you guys are aware, so that when you guys are kept, so.
Yeah, perhaps we could have you come back for a quick follow-up or two as the process moves along then, right? I don't know if next month is too soon.
How we're gonna move forward, with this project and then for any future traffic calming projects that may come up.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. So Scott is not with us yet, right? I can hardly see because that little picture is so small, but.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so sorry that I'm not seeing you in person, but I guess I
I
wouldn't.
know. I'm so sorry too.
Anyway, well, I can't come either. So I'm going to go ahead and put you up on the agenda so that as you may know, one of the main things, Scott, that our committee is dealing with is how to improve communication on important projects, resiliency projects, infrastructure projects. And since that's what your committee is all about, is public information. I wonder if you might share with us your kind of thoughts and maybe a high level look at what you think is most important in making sure that residents and stakeholders are informed. Because we know sometimes that things fall through the cracks. And are there some things that you've looked at where you think the city might improve the process? So I'll just throw it to you.
I gotta tell you, so I've been doing a lot of stuff for a long time, and I'm very tuned into some things and very tuned out to other things. So there's a lot of messages that I just miss, particularly email. That's the worst to me way to reach anybody. I find personally, and from what I've heard from other people, people really love the text alerts from the city. I think that's really effective, and it's very obviously timely because it happens in real time. And I think that's really appreciated. Old people like me and the people in their 50s and 60s are totally on Facebook, and that reaches people like you would not believe. From a marketing perspective, even in real estate, it's unbelievable to me how Facebook is so effective with people. Obviously, younger people are more on Instagram and they love video. So, quick little video hits. I think the city does an amazing job with the magazine, and I know that there's a lot of people that want to be involved that read the magazine and see stuff in there. But I would say for people that aren't completely clueless and ignore notices that are posted and ignore emails from their buildings and from the city, I think text messaging is really the way to go, if you ask me. I mean, Amy does this. She's communicating with a lot of people all the time. So, I mean, what do you think? Am I off base with any of that?
Yeah, and I think what this committee is particularly interested in, Scott, is the experience of your committee. And you've been on a successful committee for maybe a good 7 years now. And you worked really, really hard to develop messaging about flood awareness through many different methods. And I think it's kind of all the things you just mentioned, right? It's all these different methods, but also being consistent with the type of messages that come out. So we have 10 messages that are approved by the committee, and we share them in many different ways to build awareness of flooding and flood risk. And that is a huge amount of the points that we get that helps give people a savings on their flood insurance. So there's a real benefit to that as well. But I mean, maybe from your perspective, Scott, there's the types of messages that you're seeing resonates through that committee.
Yeah, I mean, listen, from what I'm understanding from people that I personally speak to, again, text messaging seems to be the thing, and the magazine. But I'm talking to people that are typically more aware. And when I run into neighbors in my building and stuff, definitely, I know from just a marketing perspective and messaging perspective and being on condo board, it takes like 6 times for a message to resonate with people. So obviously that doesn't work in an emergency, but it really does. I mean, Claire, you probably know the same thing with a neighborhood association. You say things, you advertise things, and people completely, oh, I never heard about it. No one emailed me, and you show them, wow, well, we see you read or open the email 3 times.
Yeah.
So people don't want to see things, or they just don't see things. It's human nature. And it's like Amy said, repetitive. I think consistency and repetitive, and you got to kind of do it, and you got to hit people where they are going to get a message. And there's plenty of people that I know just toss the Miami Beach magazine out. They don't even open it. But the people that want to be informed, they open it and they read it, and the graphic messages that we have, the city has so adeptly changed and evolved over the years. It's a beautiful graphic message, and it kind of, I think it draws people to read it for the flood resiliency things that we had that was in the magazine, I believe. And I know we have fact sheets and king tides. That's like a big thing that we have talked about all the time. And I know that now people know when the king tides are. I mean, it's amazing to me that they know. there's no more a question like, oh my God, the street's flooded. They totally know when it's gonna happen. And,
How
you
long
know,
did that take, I wonder? Couple years, or it's been a while to train everybody, right?
it has been. I mean, I can't believe when we've heard this has been going on for almost 8 years, 7 years. I couldn't even believe. I would have said it's been 2 or 3 years is what in my mind it was. But COVID, there's COVID and all that stuff. But yeah, no, it's been you know, we're, and I say this and I really mean this. The city does such a great job with communication. And, you know, I totally, we rely on them for all of it, obviously, but, you know, we, sometimes the messages we tweak and we, you know, we can offer some perspective, but clearly they're very professional, very, consistent. And when they change these graphic, it evolved rather than just change. So you still recognized it, but it's just getting better, like the graphics that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I think that's, I don't know that, am I missing anything, Amy? We talk about it all the time. It's just like hit the people, you got to hit the people with where they are, because that's the thing. Like one thing does not work for all groups of people. And older people, I say that myself included, are really into Facebook. It's unbelievable how the people that are in Facebook, that next door neighbor thing, you know, that's turned into such a troll fest. People just complain on that a lot. But I know the city puts things on it, and I do see, you know, it's effective. I think, you know, those two things in my demographic, I think are what people are really reading. But again, back to the younger people, text messaging is huge. I mean, I think you just couldn't be better. They'll unsubscribe if it's not useful to them. But I think it's been great for the flooding. I mean, that we're flooding. And, you know, that's a big deal when lanes are closed, when roads are closed and dangerous and expected flooding is coming. They know both with king tides and these huge storms that we've had. I think it's been invaluable. I mean, that's to me, my favorite and I think most important communication. Amy, what do you think? I'd love to hear if you think.
I mean, I would just jump on that and funny thinking back, I think we were the first city to really do messaging around king tides. I know the county sort of took our information and they made it even better and created a toolkit so that they could share it with other cities so that they could use it. So I do think that's important. You know, one of the things your committee does, Scott, is to approve an annual, like a plan. So we actually lay out all the different things we're going to communicate. We say, here's our 10 messages, here's what, you know, and here's how we're going to communicate them. And then we actually implement it. And it's actually a big effort from city staff, and we work really closely with the communications team. But when those flood texts go out, you know, all of that is very carefully orchestrated. We have like an SOP that says if water is coming, you know, the director of public works, it's his responsibility and authority to take a look and see what's coming, to start the flood messaging. You know, it's our parking director's responsibility to open up the flood parking relief program. So we sort of have all of that spelled out, which I do think is helpful. And we have to follow it, because if we don't follow it, we're not going to get those special points for that competitive community rating system program, which saves everybody money on flood insurance. So I think that's important. You know, we had the flood insurance forum last week and Scott spoke at it. He did a wonderful job from the residents' perspective. And we talked about flood awareness and concerns with flood insurance and how to do flood mitigation on your property. And it was for like an evening meeting online. It was pretty well attended. I think we had a good 50 people. And it wasn't about a neighborhood project that would have had a turnout of 100 people, right? It was just, you know, and it was recorded and it's online. But I think we are just structuring a lot of different outreach about very specific flood awareness messaging. And that I think has worked really well for your committee, Scott. And they give us great feedback too on ideas.
Yeah, I mean, our biggest thing now, like I think a big thing is the grants to make people's properties resilient. And I think that's one of the things communication wise that we're working on doing a better job and getting that wider out there. But yeah, I mean, it's evolving, but again, consistency and you got to keep hitting the same message. You got to keep hitting it.
and train people. So I'm wondering before, since Scott's been kind enough to come to us, do people have questions from the committee for Scott? Ron, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
Oh,
Kurt?
I don't. I have
Everybody
any questions about my house, but I will keep them.
just- Okay, Karen,
I do not, thank you.
Alon,
I do not as well.
and Galen.
No, I think, well, no, I'm good. I do have a comment though. I did a research study once in Connecticut where I talked to a large subset of 500 community water organizations, and they really echo what Scott said. So these are like, most ones I talked to were serving less than 100 people, or less than 100 homes, I mean. And they were struggling so much to communicate because their communities were just fractured in the way that they wanted to be talked to. And they have much less capacity, obviously, but I think the ones that were doing it the best just accepted. So it's just an endorsement of what you're saying. It was resonating with me that the ones who seem to have figured it out, and similarly, it's like just communicating about these like little water system things, but then also when they storm, essentially the water would go out and tell everybody like boil your water, or something like that. But they were just trying to figure this out. Is it text messages? Is it Facebook? You call on the phone? Like older communities, that's what they had.
Well, and to your point, and it's interesting because we tend to use text messages on emergency basis, you know, like alert there's a flood coming, you know, something that's very, very important. We don't use them, I think, for things like a neighborhood project or things that are more run-of-the-mill informational, and I think that's a judgment call when it comes to communications. I mean, I get text messages every time there's a sale somewhere, and I find it very irritating because it's not like the best information. If I got a text message saying, hey, there's a community meeting Tuesday night about a capital project in your neighborhood, like I might hit, it's not an emergency, but it's gonna grab my attention more than it probably. So that's maybe something to consider.
It's a good point. Because you train people that the text message is an emergency, so there is a judgment call about how many text messages you want to send about how many different topics, but it certainly would be, to Scott's point, worth a try, because we know that the text messaging works. And the Facebook, I mean, I know the city does an amazing job, as Scott and everyone points out, and maybe there's just another way with these neighborhood projects to add some text messaging, to add a little bit different flavor of it, you know, the way we put things up on Facebook and so on. Scott, do you have any other tips or suggestions for us before we thank you?
No, you know, I go back to it. We're such a unique city with you know, with so much tourism, and we're so sophisticated for our size. And I think, you know, the communication tools that the city has, that what Melissa does, and, you know, that spring break messaging obviously was stellar, but we have savvy commissioners and mayor who use social media. And, you know, I think we have a pretty savvy audience too. So it's, you know, use the city. I mean, ask them, rely on their opinions. We always do. We rarely second guess anything they say. We just always fine tune and tweak things. And we have some suggestions, obviously, because we're residents and we know what, you know, what we want to hear and what we don't want to hear. But for sure, just rely on their expertise, because they really know how to reach people, and they know what doesn't work too. And the text messaging, again, you're right. You cannot overdo it with that. Because everything's like that, though, you know, you can't overdo it, but there are those places, redundancy, and the different groups will have their different methods of doing it. So good luck.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, and hopefully we could call you back to pick your brain another time.
Anytime. It was great seeing you, Claire.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that I think we learned about text messaging for sure, but Amy's right too. I get texts about every single event in the universe. And if I get sick of it, I just opt out, like Scott said. So it may be something we should be doing more of. We have next, I wanted to sort of see if we could quickly move to the website engagement update before we go to the project timeline overview. Could we do that quickly, Gabby?
Sure, so we're bringing up a little spreadsheet that we were able to capture from our website.
Cool.
And this is your all website, you're one of the communities that has your own. And it's really nice if you haven't been on it. We were saying that we actually go on there all the time, so some of the clips are probably from us. But it keeps the agendas and the minutes, and it also connects you to all of the city active projects list. And so it's a great resource, and we also created a whole list of resources about resilience. There are studies, there are projects, there are all of the master plans, so it is a great website. Communications has been including the little clip about this committee within their newsletter that goes out every other Friday. So that may be driving up some of the participation as well, but it is being included, and that goes out to tons of residents to invite people to basically learn more about the committee. But these are the views and the users, and I think it's not huge. Not what you're looking for, Claire.
Well, September 2023, we did pretty well. Look at that. That was probably us.
Yeah, I think that's when we really first started using it. And we had back then, we were doing the vulnerability assessment pop-ups where we were trying to understand people's experience with flooding at other city events. So maybe people were checking that out as well.
Anybody have any questions or comments about this? Because I would just say, let's just keep making sure that the committee gets these stats so that we're tracking them a little bit and see if, I'm wondering if when did we start the email blurbs going out? That was toward the end of last year.
It was more in the fall. We'd have to check the exact.
I'm just wondering if it was September, that we started it and we had a small blip because of that. And I'm wondering if that's the case, maybe we check out making some tweak to that blurb so that it appears differently or is refreshed, and we get people more interested again. Anybody else have a comment or question about the engagement?
What is the web address?
It is www.md as in Miami Beach risingabove.com. And once you get there, I think the easiest thing to do is just to type in.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
We'll have to see. Yeah.
I'll share I think it's still sharing the spreadsheet for you, Claire. So let me
Yeah.
Let me adjust this.
It's okay. I know how to get there. I can do it.
In the interest of the recording as well, right?
There we go.
All right, so if we search,
Yeah.
Too bad you can't put NERPA in there.
yeah, I spelled neighborhood wrong too. So, we're just, and this is all being recorded, so that's great.
That's great. Everybody everybody has to have typos.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, but they'll remember you.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a good thing.
So here's the page. It's got a little introduction as to the purpose of the committee, a way to reach out to staff to learn more. We have a link to the master plan update, which is something very new that was approved in March, a link to all the city's active projects, and then as you scroll down, purpose, members, meetings, programs and policies, a lot of studies that we have on there, the ordinance creating the committee, additional resources.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at websites, there's a few things that you can look at as far as how they're being effective. So we were just looking at that data, and you can take a look at the number of events or the number of users, and that could be interesting and good. But it depends on what you're trying to get them to do, right? Do you want them to be reading the information that's on there? If so, you might want the engagement time to be a little bit higher, right? So their time spent on the website. Or, you know, if you want them to be following those links onto these specific websites, Google Analytics should be able to tell us that information as well. I can check with our administrator for that. But if say the main thing that we want them to do on this page is to click this link to go to the active projects, and we see that as valuable, then, you know, depending on the number of people who are doing that and visiting, then, you know, we may be reaching that goal. So I think when we're talking about these kind of analytics, it's important to be intentional with kind of the parts that you want to focus on.
I agree, and I think having them click on I mean, that was one of our big innovations, that we wanted to make sure they could click through and see what was actually going on. So I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but I certainly feel that, you know, trying to get data on that and drive people toward looking at the projects and the stormwater master plan updates would be very good. Does everyone agree with that? Or do you have other comments, things you'd like to track or drive people toward? Because it is a great tool. It's just only as good as it gets used, right? And we, you know, that's data that we don't necessarily get unless we know to ask for it, right? Is that what?
I know where to find it.
Well, I mean, the city's main website has pretty easy access to the active projects.
Right.
This website is specific for resilience and climate resilience, so it's everything, all the big plans that we have, and programs. And it's about our city's natural environment as well. So
right.
It's kind of a special little spin-off, but I like this because it directs people back to the main site too. So if you click on that and all the active projects, very simply, people can see, you can filter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So I wouldn't mind knowing how many people click through to that. In addition, how many people, you know, what they click on would be interesting to me, just generally. But I think that if we sort of revisit this on a regular basis and get this data, that maybe we can start to build some energy around getting people more involved. I don't know if we're at the place where we want to be sending them all text messages to come see us, but any other thoughts around the table? We'll start maybe with Galen. Anything?
No, I mean, my only thought was that there might be other more relevant websites to look at. Maybe in
Yeah.
what we're saying, yeah.
On the
Yeah, I think if we're gonna talk about a specific resilience project. I don't
Sure.
know, a normal engagement, like, and we could do this retrospectively, be like, look, we're not making any recommendations, but we could look at the web history around a specific, I don't know, Normandy Isle, see how many people are actually clicking. Are they using it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And does the city typically track that kind of data? Noel or anybody?
Yes, if Melissa was here, I'm sure she would have some information on that. She does. They're looking at that all the time. We completely rebuilt the city's website.
Yeah, it's just a matter of asking the right question.
Well, I can certainly track it by area, the zip code, because all of North Beach is 32141.
But I think it's just good that we're starting to actually, that we have data, that we have engagement data, and then we can start to use it in various ways if we want to, and that we keep updated on it. Alon, did you have anything on this topic?
I think to get people to come to the website, I think it'll be more effective if the city went to them. Mailers, emails, signage, neighborhood outreach to different HOAs and community groups. But I don't think we should have high hopes of people coming to the website.
No, I think it's just nice to see if they are, and if we do have things that we're linking to, right, that we think are important, to see if they're going there. You know, we're certainly, as Galen points out, and as we all know, you know, the whole resiliency side is important, and the city has lots of things going on, but it's kind of just, you know, it's a good to know thing and something that might be useful for us.
But if we look at those views, I mean, you're not getting a message out, 40 views.
But that's only to the committee.
Yeah.
That's just the committee though.
So this is to the committee. So if you'll go to the website, Noel,
Okay.
Yeah, so it's that specific page.
yeah, so it's the committee page. If you go to mdrisingabove.com, that has a lot of information and activity. And this is where you can learn everything about our programs, plastic free, all the resilience strategy studies.
And what's the data showing on that site?
Thousands of views.
Thousands.
This has thousands.
Yeah.
We did, communications did a pretty big, campaign a couple of years ago, and they actually presented to Scott's committee, and they were just through the roof. I mean, the amount of activity, there was billboards, there was, you know, on bus shelters, there was emails, there was a lot happening, but that was a specific, I think it was a $250,000 campaign to educate people on just climate and resilience. And that was, I feel like it was maybe like 5 years ago.
No. Yeah.
So, but whenever we have a campaign, so for example, if you go to Biscayne Bay, last year we did a pretty, all the way to the right, Noel.
Sorry, thank you.
We did a pretty big campaign here. Don't fertilize the bay, don't be rough on the bay, take the pledge. Every time we do a community event, like you're all gonna come to Turtle Fest Saturday, right? Maybe, hopefully, so we have really nice, also Stonewall Park. But we have tables and we'll have people, like if you wanna get the little stuffy sea turtle, you gotta take the pledge. And so people have to check off to say, I commit to not using fertilizers during the rainy season, and I will pick up litter, and so it's a way to drive people. So like this site has like, you know, very, very high levels of activation. So we just like to direct people to.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on this? I liked it because this is just the committee. I mean, I think it is interesting to be able to see people are coming to the overall Rising Above site and as Amy points out, being driven by specific events as well, which is great. But we just are trying to look at our little piece of the world and just get a snapshot of it because we were interested. Anybody else? Thank you very much for getting these numbers to us and for just keeping us updated then on how we're doing. Anybody else before we close this item?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was gonna say is like, I think some of the others, I don't put too much emphasis on that. That's not, I mean, that's a little bit, you know, getting into the machinery of how we do stuff as opposed to, you know, I mean, I think the effectiveness of our committee is reflected in the impact we have on communications, on specific projects, and those projects, you know, if we see that there is more communication about projects and better communication about projects, that people don't go to our website for that. It's gonna be reflected in what we see in communications. So
Agreed.
I think it's a little bit like, you know, people, not that many people may be interested in looking into the watch and seeing all the gears. They want to know, you know, that what's important is is it telling time accurately? And that's going to be reflected project by project.
Excellent point. Thanks for that. So with that, I'll just say thanks for doing this, Noel and Amy and Gabby, and we'll just keep updated on it as we go along. Just FYI, because it did come up.
If I could.
Yeah.
So just one little thought. I just know that from the websites of Miami Beach Senior High School, for example, where my son is a student, whenever there's a deadline or something coming up, when you go to the website, there's a little pop-up window that comes up and says, this Friday, purchase your prom tickets or whatever is going on. Maybe if there's like some project, you know, that has become relevant, that the Rising Above website could put a little pop-up with a little link to, you know, someone could click on the link to see, you know, if they're interested in that particular project.
Mhm.
And I think
I
generally
find
our main city website has that. I don't think that we're doing that on the MD Rising website right now, but.
Okay.
Like Turtle Fest.
Yeah, I might be down there. So scroll down now. Okay, keep scrolling. Yeah, so these are the events. There we go, Turtle Fest.
Turtle Fest.
And an Arbor Day tree planting on Friday. You're all welcome to come to that too. So yes, I mean, this is where I think most of the ongoing activity, the Rising Above site is more evergreen information resources.
Right.
Business of projects.
Right. Great. Well, thank you so much for all of this. And it's always good. I don't know about anybody else. It's always good for me to get another look at, you know, how to get around the city website where I have had many misadventures. Okay, so we're going to move to the project timeline overview. We have approximately 15 minutes. Well, not quite. But maybe we can do that fairly quickly, neighborhood affairs.
So we actually, Kevin had to attend the Memorial Day planning meeting, so he wasn't.
Right.
able to be
So
here.
we're not going to do it.
Yeah, so he
Okay, we'll push it.
also not quite where he's not quite ready. So he's
That's
trying
fine.
to.
It'll fit better anyway, probably in the next meeting, if it's okay with everybody, because we did spend, which I think was a good thing, a time with the traffic calming project, which I think was great. In terms of the LTCs, I just wanted everybody on the committee to be able to review those LTCs, the previous LTCs, in case there were any thoughts or ideas that might pop up from those suggestions that might be things we want to address. For example, and a lot of this in the LTC of April 4th, 2022, for example, it was actually a request from the late Commissioner Samuelin regarding harmonization agreements and the problems that were being experienced and how the city might deal with those. However, since it was a communication based, it might provide some things that, you know, we want to continue to review. For example, you know, the whole idea that providing frequent and clear updates to people, and that's kind of been a theme today. You know, do we send text messages? Are we including the right things in notifications and surveys when we send them out? More visual, simplified, and personal information here on page 2 pops out at me. The whole idea of, and this is something we haven't really discussed, looking into the PIO guidelines, the public information officers who are contractors, they're vendors. Should we be looking a little more closely, or should we ask for maybe someone to come and talk to us a little bit about, and that's number 3 on the page that we kindly put up on the screen, build trust with the PIO through building into the PIO contract guidelines for regular, clear, and consistent communication, etc. In fact, I know in South of 5th, one of the things that was an issue is that PIOs often didn't know whom to contact in a condo building, especially with condos and multifamily buildings. So I don't know if that's something that we would want to reprise. Also up above number 3, back in number 2, the penultimate bullet point, creating some sort of a an ambassador program or program where testimonials could be given. If it wouldn't be just extra work. I'm not sure it's necessary now. And Amy, you might be able to speak to that in terms of, do you think that we're still having trouble with harmonization issues and people not understanding them? Would there be a place for anything like more testimonials from homeowners or condo owners?
So I think for that one, you know, a really nice video was done, except it was done by our former mayor, where he interviewed different, I would say, people that have been through the process and the impacts on their neighborhoods. So that's a bit dated now, but I do think there'd be some value in maybe inviting CIP to come and talk about the process of West Avenue and the outreach that's happening, because that's really, I think, the project where they have been working on these agreements with residents. So that is probably the most relevant one at this point.
Also, I've heard David talk about, you know, Indian Creek as an example of when, you know, issues come up about road raising, impacts and all that, whereas some people say, gee, it doesn't have to be like Sunset Harbor, you know, he likes to use Indian Creek a lot, I think, as an example of something that, where you've had raising, and harmonization, but people seem to be okay.
It was very different, it wasn't as dramatic,
so,
a lot more space.
Right, so that's, you know, I'm looking at this, information about lessons the city has learned and how harmonization is improved, that he could, you know, CIP could talk about. I mean, I know if you live in a neighborhood where it wasn't done as well, you might have, well, here's an example, you know, see, this didn't turn out so well here, but here it worked, we did things better, we learned some things from this experience, and when the project comes to your neighborhood, we'll be able to, it'll look more like this than it looked like that.
Yeah, and I believe, Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it was a couple of years ago that I think it was Kevin that presented on harmonization, and really Indian Creek was highlighted a lot in those examples, and he had a lot of great visuals. So I agree, it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's maybe time to just revisit. I mean, I remember the presentation, and but I think maybe it's time to just revisit, what are the bright lines that stand out as places where things can still be improved. And I thank you for mentioning, Amy, the video. I haven't seen that, so but yeah, maybe so. Shall we invite CIP to come next time? Put them on the agenda. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then who would? What about this PIO concept? It still kind of bugs me personally, because I remember that the experience with the PIO vendor for me as a SOFNA board member at that time, I don't know if I was vice president, Ron, or president, or maybe you were, I don't remember, but it was, I thought that the public meetings could have been so much better and so much more, the data collected could have been so rich. And maybe it's because I do a lot of meeting facilitation myself in organizations, but I don't know. I also felt that sometimes people weren't being contacted appropriately or noticed, and that seems to be a theme that's coming up as we see with the Normandy Isle situation. So who would be the best person to speak with us about this?
So that would be Kevin. And
Oh,
I think
Kevin, okay.
if you wanted to put something, you know, on the agenda, and
Yeah.
for him to come and talk about maybe any updates in the outreach or PIO process since it's
Perfect.
last been discussed?
Yes, that would be, at least I would love to see that. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Because we do trust and trust these vendors with quite a lot of communication work. And I don't personally feel as a citizen like I know a lot about them or what their capabilities are or how they're being guided to go through the process or to facilitate. I felt very strongly in SOFNA that year that I wasn't, it was kind of like a graduate school exercise. It wasn't. So anyway, I'd love to know more. So that would be great if that's okay with everybody. If Kevin can speak to that, I know he'll have quite a bit to speak about next time. But anything else with respect to that was that's all I have with the LTCs. But if anything jumps out at anybody that they'd like us to reprise or take another look at or get updates on, does anybody have anything? No? Okay. Well, hearing nothing, I think we move to scheduling additional meeting dates. We have the dates for May and June. Do we want to schedule one for July at this moment? It's 6:04, so I'm mindful of our time.
So we have two potential dates that we were looking at, because we're always struggling with the other committees. So we were looking at July 11. Oh, sorry, nope. Scratch that.
Okay, scratched.
Scratch that, so. Gabby, why don't you do this part, because you're clearly much better than this.
Okay, so I have some options for Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. For July, the 16th, which is a Tuesday, is open. Let me just double check that's still open. And then just a heads up that if we do continue with the Wednesday scheduling, the meetings would have to be at 4:30 because building department uses this conference room until 4. So if that's an issue, then we Tuesday would be better. So
4:30 is better for me anyway.
4:30 is fine with me. So what would that be, the 17 or the?
17th, 4:30. Does that work for everybody?
I'm sorry, I can hardly hear it. I know it's.
Sorry, July 17th, Wednesday at 4:30.
Yes, that's fine for me. Is that fine for everybody?
Yeah, for me.
Okay, now we got July nailed down. We don't have August. Do we want to like go wild and look at September for a second?
September 18th, which is also Wednesday at 4:30.
Works pour moi.
September, what was it?
18th.
September 18th, okay.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah. And do we want to push further into October? And look at something like-
Recess.
Oh,
Sorry?
He was just asking about August and that's the recess.
Yeah, that's the recess. So October 16th or 23rd?
The 16th, there's nothing saved in the morning.
I think the 23rd might be better. It was October 23rd.
wait, what do we decide on,
September 18th.
September 18th?
Okay, I'm checking Yom Kippur. It's October 11th, October 12th.
Third,
It's not a problem. So what would we want to do maybe in October?
The 23rd, also Wednesday, 4:30.
Sure. Works for me. if it works for everybody, do we want to stop there, having done so well so far? Or do we want to move on to November? If we like these Wednesdays, we might as well just go ahead and do November and December, and then we could adjust if we have to. November, maybe the 20th?
That's commission meeting, I think.
We have Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
November 13th, maybe?
works for me. Yeah, let's just pencil them in and then, you know, we can revisit them too. 13 is good. And then last but hardly least would be December 18 or 11. What looks good to you guys?
It's fine.
December 4th?
Wednesday are possible?
That week, so I would say no. Isn't it that week? It's the first week, isn't it?
Yeah.
17th?
No, yeah, this is not, I have one, yeah.
December is becoming a stumbling block, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's leave it. We can do it.
Okay.
We can do it next time. We did great. We got all the way through November. And we did a lot today. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry again for having to look at you in a very small screen. I hope to be with you. I know I'll be with you next time. I'm going to do we staff updates we didn't do?
Oh, I mean, we can save them for next time.
Okay, all right. And we have no public here to comment. I don't think so. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
That's that motion.
Hey.
We do have 2 phone callers on. I just want to make sure.
Oh, do we? Sorry, I didn't see them.
I just allow them to talk, so I just,
sorry. Of
allow
course,
some-
I'm sorry, I did not see them. Callers, did you wish to make a comment at this time?
Yeah, so if you're on call right now, if you just unmute, you can just press *7.
No? Well, callers, we thank you for dialing in. If we're going to give you one more second to unmute, if you have any comments or questions for our committee. No? Okay, well, hearing nothing, I do have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, and we'll see you all next month with my ankle working. Thank you so much, and hopefully Turtle Fest, I'll try to make it.
Turtle Fest, we'll send them around.
Speaking of turtles, were you on the phone with David Suarez when you called?
I was.
Thanks, everybody. I'm gonna go.
Thanks.
Thank you, bye-bye.